My name is Timothy DuPont. For my mechanism description presentation, I'm going to be talking about the Hoyer lift. A Hoyer lift is basically a brand or product name of a sling lift. It's released through Joerns Healthcare. Joerns Healthcare was formerly known as Ted Hoyer and Company. Ted Hoyer had created the first item that was most similar to the modern-day Hoyer lift back in 1950, thus why it is often called the Hoyer lift. There are two kinds of lifts. There is a manual Hoyer lift and an electric Hoyer lift. The manual Hoyer lift has a handle that you have to crank it up and down, which is oftentimes going to be a little more work than the electric Hoyer lift. The electric Hoyer lift has a box that you can press it up or down, just hold the button down, and sometimes that comes in the form of a remote. The main function anyways, of a Hoyer lift is to help lift and transfer people that aren't able to do it on their own. You generally lift or transfer them from a bed to a wheelchair to a chair, or other places for them to sit or lay down. They're used by resident assistants, CNAs, which is a certified nursing assistant, and nurses at nursing facilities and some long-term care facilities, and also hospitals for the patients that need the assistance. It can be used in several cases. One of them is when somebody falls. This is most common at a residential facility where a resident falls because they have weak bones, and they use it to lift them up from the ground and stand back to their feet. It is the safest way for any caregiver to do this, to lift them, because of the fact that sometimes the caregiver might not be the same size as the resident, and it's easier. It is more convenient. It also is safer by a legal standpoint. If somebody falls down and a caregiver is lifting them, then if they fall again and they break their arm, or if they break something worse than that, they could get in trouble for it. They could be sued, they could lose their job. But if you're using an item by a different brand that is said to be by the health board that it is safe to use, if it breaks while you're using it, then the caregiver is less likely to take the fall for it. It is something that would have to, have a recall issued or have something fixed. It also gives better support in general. It helps the patient, stand. It helps the patient know that there's something secure holding them if they have trust issues. Generally, a Hoyer lift is between 4 and 5 feet in height. It's pretty lightweight, and they don't really vary in size. However, they do have different size slings. There's small, medium, large. There also is an extra large, but those are less commonly seen. The coloring varies, but usually it is still just metal instead of colored, and you do see some white out there, especially with the electric ones. The parts of a Hoyer lift. There's 4 main parts: the cradle, which holds onto the sling; the boom, which reaches from the mast to the cradle; the mast itself is used to hold other items that are necessary for the Hoyer lift to function, and also connects the boom to the base. So, there's some stability there. The base itself generally has wheels, which are called casters. Now we're going into the secondary parts, which is, the caster is basically a wheel, as I said, and there are caster brakes as well. The mast sleeve holds the mast to the base, giving it better support than if it was just a pole connected to another pole. There's an adjusting lever handle. The adjusting lever handle is used mainly to grip while it is raising or lowering, but also is a form of security. The steering bar is used if you have to transfer a resident or a patient from a bed to a wheelchair, for example, and you have to move the Hoyer lift over to the chair. Kind of like a car. You back up and you go over. It's not meant to be used over long distances. There's also a hand pendant, which is basically another form of a handle. If it's an electric Hoyer lift, you'll also have the battery pack, which is where the electricity is coming from, and you also have the control box. Now, as I said earlier, the control box, it's not always connected to the mast. It can be in the form of a remote. Together, these items all work to help lift the resident, with the sling connected to the cradle. The battery pack and control box, if it's electric, are helping lift or lower the mast and the boom. The brakes help so that it doesn't slide out of the way while you're trying to lower someone and then they don't land where they're supposed to land. It prevents injury. Hoyer lifts are a great thing to have at a nursing home facility, for a hospital who have patients that cannot move on their own or have a safety hazard risk if they do move on their own. It takes less effort to help lift and move them, and it also takes less effort to help someone who has fallen to get back on their feet and going again. It is safer for the caregiver and for the patient. It is a great piece of medical mechanisms that have been created